This is the Star TV network, and you're watching the Star News channel.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for joining us here on Talking Heads. 1 year on, do you feel a little more stable, a little more secure today than you did in March 1998?
Yes, I do feel like that. But in last March also, when we formed the government, we knew that there was no alternative to our alliance. Problems came from our own camp, not from outside.
But has there been as you now have raised problems came from your own camp, do you think 1 year on there's been a realization within your own camp that this type of politics cannot survive, this brinkmanship which is practiced by some of your allies, that it has no place?
No, I don't think that anybody adopted the policy of brinkmanship.
But when you say, sir, that
regional parties, they represent regional aspirations. And they want that they should have some tangible say in the running of the coalition.
do you think that's a good development for Indian politics, or do you worry about it that it's becoming more and more difficult to manage these type of coalitions where different parties have different aspirations?
Regional parties have come to stay. And as I said earlier, they represent people's aspirations much better than the national parties. But regional parties must develop an all India outlook. And national parties, they should have more contacts with at the grassroots level in different regions.
So given the fact, as you say, that regional parties have come to stay, do you also believe that coalitions have come to stay, that this type of coalition experiment which you're doing is something which is now going to be more durable in Indian politics, or do you believe we'll return to single party rule after a while?
We are passing through a period of transition. But alignments will change. There will be better arrangement. Otherwise also, if there is no coalition, the country has to be run on the basis of consensus.
So tell me, do you believe that you said a little while ago that your problems came from within, as it were. Do you think that, in a sense, prevented you from day-to-day governance, that one eye of the Prime Minister was always on what Jayalalitha was doing or Mamata Banerjee was doing, and that affected day-to-day governance at any stage?
No, it did not.
But you say today you're more...
The basis has been the national agenda. And the government has been functioning on that basis.
But you say you're more secure today. Is that because you feel now much more relaxed, much more in tune with being the Prime Minister of the country? Was there a spell in March last year where the fact that you'd only been a 13-day Prime Minister earlier affected you in any way?
To some extent, it did affect. But you learn by experience.
What are the lessons you've learned, sir? What lessons have you learned in this 1 year? Something which you would do differently now, maybe?
The one lesson that I have learned is that don't worry too much.
Did you worry a lot in the past? Anything would happen?
In the beginning, yes.
Is that because of the nature of person that Mr. Vajpayee is much more, you were a person who gets affected easily by criticism? Your critics would say that you're too soft. That Mr. Vajpayee is not tough enough. For a coalition arrangement, perhaps you need a certain element of ruthlessness sometimes. You think you're not ruthless enough, sir?
There is no need to be ruthless. But you think that the decision to go nuclear and to have a test in Pokhran was not a difficult decision, and I took that decision. I knew what was coming. I knew that attempts will be made to isolate India, that there will be economic sanctions. But security of the country came first, and I took a bold decision.
Would you call it the high point, sir, of the last 1 year from a personal point of view?
Yes, one of the high points.
You don't have any regrets about us going nuclear. There were the fact that we got isolated internationally, there were sanctions imposed against us. There was a feeling that we were not prepared for it. You say you were fully prepared for this and you have
Yes.
no regrets. You have no regrets about
No,
going
not
nuclear.
at all.
You think the neighborhood, sir, is a safer place today?
Yes, it is.
You took another bold decision, Mr. Vajpayee. You actually took that bus to Lahore. You actually visited the Minar-e-Pakistan. Was that an attempt to tell the hardliners within the Sangh Parivar what you stood for? Was this part of a battle within the Sangh Parivar, or would you say this is something you're convinced
it has
about?
nothing to do with Sangh Parivar. I wanted to tell the people of Pakistan that we have accepted partition and they should have no apprehensions on that ground.
You know, your critics also keep coming back with this, that the government is remote controlled by the RSS, that it's run from... Now, how do you feel when you hear these things?
No, I laugh. I take it as a joke. We are elected representatives of the people. We are accountable in Parliament. So decisions have to be taken by us. But in the process of taking decisions, we do consult many organizations, many individuals.
How do you feel? You've also taken very tough decisions, Mr. Prime Minister, on the economic front. This budget which was there, in a sense, is seen as the second wave of reforms. The finance minister spoke actually of downsizing the government. Is that again something you're convinced about, that that's the way forward? Because many people, when your government started, thought that this would be a Swadeshi government. And
it is a Swadeshi government.
Swadeshi economics, they thought would be at the top of the agenda.
No, it was not clearly explained what do we mean by Swadeshi. Now things are clear. Swadeshi doesn't mean that India should become an island. We have to move in this competitive world.
You have no regrets, Mr. Prime Minister, about anything that you've done in the last 1 year. Would you, for example, your critics would say that right at the beginning, when the cabinet was to be formed, you succumbed to pressure when that cabinet was being formed, and therefore gave space to some of your allies to exploit Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
I don't think so. After all, you have to carry with you your coalition partners.
How difficult is that, sir? Tell us at a practical level, 18 parties...
Not very difficult. All that they want is to be consulted. Sometimes in a hurry to take decisions, we forget what will be the repercussions in remote area, and that comes in the way.
But you said you were, at the very outset, you said you're feeling much more secure. Is that because you think the process of consultation now has been institutionalized?
Yes.
That many of these allies therefore now feel that there is a Prime Minister in Delhi who's there to look after their interests?
That is true.
But in the process of that, do you end up succumbing sometimes to pressure? There's a feeling, there was a perception, particularly in the first 6 months, that you were succumbing to pressure, let's say by a Jayalalitha, that was the perception.
Not succumbing to pressure, but as I said earlier, you have to take your partners with you. And if they have a feeling, whether that feeling is well grounded or not, that feeling that they are not being consulted or they have been ignored, that feeling we must not allow to continue.
So in your 1 year high point you said was nuclear tests. Anything that else that you feel stands out, which you would like to be, which you like to feel that in the last 1 year some stamp has been left?
I hope my visit to Pakistan will leave some stamp.
Do you think there will be a follow-up to that? Do you hope
Yes.
so? Are you convinced of normalization of relations between the two countries?
I hope so.
Low points, Mr. Vajpayee. What was for you a low point in the last 1 year? Any time where you felt perhaps that you hadn't done what you should have done, or something which left you feeling disappointed?
The volte-face by Congress party on Bihar came as a rude shock to me.
Why? So they would say they function as an opposition party. Do you feel that Indian politics today is far too confrontational? We are seeing it now in Parliament on the Bhagwat issue also. Is that what disappoints you as a veteran parliamentarian yourself?
Yes. For the Congress party members to jump into the well. I never thought that the situation will become so desperate for them.
What about the aftermath of the Staines murder and the attacks on Christians? Do you think that was a low point? Because your government was targeted at that time, saying that you're not doing enough at the end of the day to stop such forces.
No, immediate action was taken in Gujarat. People were arrested. They were detained. About Odisha, there is still a mystery.
So this perception, though, that the BJP remains, I mean, you've seen the party from the beginning, the perception that people have, it's a Hindu national, it's a Hindu fundamentalist party. You're run by the RSS, what we talked about earlier. How do you react when such perceptions are there? How do you dispel such notions among people?
As time passes, people are having a correct notion about us.
Do you think the last 1 year has gone a long way in that sense? Or do you
Yes,
think
it
some
has.
perceptions have been strengthened of people, like when Staines happened?
Now, how can we be blamed for what happened in Odisha? No.
So let me come back.
Media has overplayed things.
Let me come back to something you said, sir, about legislation, congressmen rushing into the well. Do you think legislative business in this country in the last 1 year or over the last few years has been suffering? You find important bills, the women reservation bill, sir, has been stalled for months, and there's been no feeling that the government is serious about it. Legislation seems to be suffering, sir.
No, I don't think so. Whatever we thought important, we have got get the bills passed pertaining to those important issues.
So, but does the arithmetic of this parliament make it very difficult for you, sir, in a way? Because you're all the time facing a confidence vote.
Because of the composition of parliament. Arithmetic does matter.
Does that trouble you? Does that make it more and more difficult for you, in a sense, to function perhaps as Prime Minister? Because one eye is always on what will happen in Parliament. As you said, President's rule in Bihar, and yet you can't get it passed through because the opposition party will not go along with you.
But we knew it beforehand, and we were prepared for it.
In conclusion, Mr. Prime Minister, towards the end, over the 1 year, what's I come back to it, what's the main lessons you've learned as Prime Minister? It was something, you've been leader of opposition for a long time. Making that transition to being Prime Minister, how difficult was it? What's been the main experience for you?
There has been a mixed experience.
Have you enjoyed it always?
A sense of satisfaction is there, but also a feeling of sadness. We could have done much more.
Specific areas where you feel we could have done much more?
No, it is the area of implementation. Policies are good. They look very attractive on paper. But when implementation comes, there is disappointment, writ large.
What's the roadblock there, sir? Is it the bureaucracy which stops you from implementing your packages, or is it the system?
System.
What's wrong with it? You've seen
And
it.
the administration.
What are you going to do to change it, sir? Are you trying to do something to change it, sir?
Steps are being taken and some improvement has taken place. But that is the biggest bottleneck.
Let me ask you, sir, you finished 1 year. You might have 4 years. Where do you go from now? What are your immediate priorities now? Which direction do you head
The
in?
priorities have been laid down in the national agenda. We are committed to it.
Do you ever fear, though, that those priorities you'll never really get a full chance to implement, because the arithmetic of this parliament will be such that every now and then there will be this destabilizing factor? Do you think that that factor is now inherent in our politics today, given the way this government was formed?
Yes. But that doesn't prevent us from adopting bold policies and taking them to the people.
One very last question, Mr. Vajpayee. There are two sides to Atal Bihari Vajpayee. There's the poet, philosopher, some would say, the statesman. And there is another one, some would suggest, a political survivor, someone ready to compromise to survive in politics. Are there two Atal Bihari Vajpayees? Are really the who is the real Atal Bihari Vajpayee?
I am the real Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Do you miss anything, sir, as Prime Minister? Do you miss some of the things that you did when you had, like what? What do you really miss, sir? Given your time schedule and the...
Visiting Chandni Chowk, I miss.
Anything else that you would like to do, which you feel you'd probably do only
Like
after...
to go among the people, to mix with them, to mingle with them, and to join in their joy, to share in their sadness. Sometimes I feel that I'm under detention.
How long will this detention continue, you think?
Let us see.
But you're prepared. You're prepared to be a Prime Minister. You're not someone who's here to just survive 5 years. You'd like to think that now that you've finished 1 year, that you've actually got to do something beyond this.
I've been elected for 5 years. And I hope the government will last its full term.
Right, Mr. Prime Minister. On that note, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.